Spaghetti
Where are you guys
warehouse?
I haven't been there in like 10 years. It's so good, dude. Oh my god.
I'm so mad.
Oh, I'm
No,
so
because
excited.
because Jactose, because Jackie is lactose intolerant, we don't get to go to spaghetti warehouses.
Then she's lactose intolerant. I am lactose and talented, so I go wherever the fuck I want and eat whatever the fuck I want, no matter what my lactose intolerance tries to say. So anyway,
So true.
um, all
Aloha
right.
dropouts.
Hey, dropouts! Happy episode 25. What?
I'm Brandon. This is Chelsea.
I'm so dead because I was thinking about how Brandon he condemned me one day because every episode I'm like, can't believe we made it to 20, 21, 20, because I still can't believe it. But I was listening to an episode recently, I think it might have been 22, and we didn't say anything about because I was nervous. I'm like, all right, I won't acknowledge this episode 22 because I say it every time. And then it was ruined because we didn't even sing the Taylor Swift song. God, missed
Ruined.
opportunity. I know.
We're going to have to record it and then put it back in.
Take it off the Spotify immediately. Get it out of here.
Just a new update. But Chelsea, oh my gosh, I can't believe we made it to episode 25.
I hate you and I'm done. Now we're done. Don't put this out to the universe. We're done.
Well,
I will say that it took us a couple weeks to get out episode 25 to you. Now you're hearing it. And it's a little late. We're a little behind, but I do want to say like, thank you guys so much. Cause I kind of got on our Instagram stories for like literally 2 seconds and just said like, hey, I don't know, what was really going on. I wasn't really even picking up Brandon's calls, and I kind of talked to him about that, the next day of like what depression's like. But I just had like a few days where if you guys struggle with your mental health, I actually do have anxiety and depression. And I say that because I know like we can just have bad days too. And not everyone has to be like struggling with mental illness. I get that. But I do actually have a couple things that sometimes just really take hold on me. And so I just completed 1 full year on Wellbutrin. That's my antidepressant. I'm so proud of that and really thankful for that. Like just to have done that for a year and said yes when I didn't want to, and stayed faithful to the process. And it's been helping a ton, but I was just having a really rough time. So just appreciate you guys for being so patient. And I got a lot of DMs that day from a lot of you guys that just said, not only to the podcast page, but to my personal page and my cell phone, of just people saying, hey, like, we love you. If you need anything, let us know. And I just thought that was really cool. So
that's so cool. I was going to ask you how you've been anyways, because it's just been a minute and I miss you. So it's so good to be.
Well, you are going back to school, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think you've said that on the podcast before that you're
know.
starting.
Michigan just has, I'm going to start classes in January. I never got my associates or a bachelor's degree. Actually it's really funny because when Chelsea and I met, like, we connected because we were legitimate dropouts. Like we both had dropped out of community college.
Literally. Not just religious.
And so at that point we were religious and dropouts. Now we're religious dropouts.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, I feel really excited and anxious. Excited because it's an opportunity that I can't pass up. Like Michigan has this great program called Reconnect. If you are a Michigan resident and you're right now 21 and older, you can get a associate's degree from a community college for free.
Yeah, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Totally. If you're a Michigan resident.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So that's pretty cool. Leaving religion, and when you had all your eggs in that basket, like
absolutely.
Like the church was everything I had like invested in my early 20s. So so when everybody else is graduating with degrees, I had my ministry license. And that's so right. To turn that in is almost like folding on any forward momentum you had in your career, which we talked about, but that's the reality of it. So those of you that are walking alongside us with that, you kind of get to, this is what it looks like, 28 and going back to school for an associate's. Thank God Michigan has some program like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think I'm going to do sociology because it's kind of like what we talked about on the podcast. It's what I'm interested in. It's what I read anyways. So
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too. I think it's amazing. Very
Yeah.
exciting. So I was
Anxious
really excited to
because
highlight.
we don't want to drop anything. When you're
Right.
doing so much with life, you
I
don't want to
know.
drop anything.
I
So,
know. I
I
know.
mean, and you know
Well,
that being
yeah.
mom, wife, director of a shelter and
Yeah.
trainer, like everything you've got going on.
It's hard. I just had to drop a class, which is not a big deal, right? But I teach 3 classes a week, and I just had to go down to two. And it only matters because money, right? Like I really didn't want to do that because money, but I'm getting kind of a promotion at work, and I'm working through some of those steps of like actively taking that promotion and doing a little more with work at the shelter in our nonprofit, and then just really wanting to focus on season two and some things that we have to work on for writing and putting energy into reading,
Hmm.
and actually, like, I don't know, Brandon might cut this out when he edits, but because I don't know
I
if
won't.
we're not gonna announce anybody from season two or anything yet, but one of the people
No,
we have
we
on season two
won't.
is no, we won't. But one of the people that we have locked in is an author, and
Yeah.
for him or her, and that specific person, like I've been really reworking through that book and really wanting to be able to bring that to the table. And so it's just a lot of those
Yeah.
little pieces. Like it's not just like we don't just show up to the podcast and we're like, hey, like we actually put energy and into what we're doing. And so I wanted to be able to put more time into that and more time into just like my overall general health and some things I have going on. So it sucks to drop that kind of stuff. Like you look at your plate, and ironically or oddly to me, when I was in ministry, there was 80 things I wanted to drop at all times. I was always ready to drop things. But when I'm out of ministry and you're living a life that you actually love and you're doing
Hmm.
things that you actually are passionate about, that's not just ministry that consumes your whole life, it's hard to pick things to drop. Like it really is. So definitely get that.
Yeah.
Um, not a lot of people love her for different reasons. I know, coming out of religion, but Lisa Turkerist, I think that's
Yeah.
how you pronounce her last name, wrote a book called The Best Yes. And it really was one of the best reads I've ever made. And it was kind of just like, instead of thinking about what you can cut, look at the things that you have to say yes to. Like, what are the things that
Right.
make you the most, and I love that. That's helped a lot to navigate what needs to
Yeah.
go in this season. So
That's so funny because I mean, we should always have that idea on our heads, but I was just thinking that like yesterday, Chelsea. I was thinking like I I try to sell so many things that we don't need in our apartment anymore. Like I try to sell things on
please come do that at
marketplace.
my house.
But the reality is I just met with Jackie over coffee this morning.
Yeah.
Like, and one of the things where we're trying to meet monthly, Jackie and I, as like a family check-in, and we say family because like we're a family too, but where it's a family check-in type meeting. We saw it on TikTok. It, obviously,
Yeah.
we are just now implementing it, but we want to check in once a month and check in on those things that could easily become fights or priorities that we need to
Totally. Totally.
make sure we're scheduling dates with each other. So like it's going to be really cool, I think. But it's a part of that I don't want to drop anything.
Yeah. Yep.
And we
Yep.
talked and I said I can't list things on Facebook because the reality is I'll get $25
Yep. I don't have
for
time.
things that
I
are
don't have
maybe
time.
worth way more and I just don't have time.
Right.
So Jackie helped release me from the things that I try to sell and just like
Yeah.
she was like all those frames that
This
were on the
isn't the
wall,
season. Not the
you don't
season.
need it. Not the
Right.
season. I
Yep.
got way too many things to do. And if I always
Exactly.
stare at the corners of my rooms that has these things I'm trying to sell,
Yeah.
I'll never get to the
Totally.
things that matter.
Totally. Totally.
So I just
Yeah.
thought that was a little cool.
I love that. I love that. I thought about, as we're like letting things go and like kind of moving to a conversation of just like releasing, and I don't know,
Yeah.
whatever, it made me think of just like looking at overall the last 25 episodes, and kind of like, it's funny because as I look back, I don't know that there's one episode I would like let go of or like release or be like, yeah, I wish we wouldn't have done that. Like I
Mm,
don't think I have that about anything, but I do really have a few episodes that stood so so dominantly in my mind. And I wish we would have taken a poll from our people from our community, which we didn't, but maybe next time we do a conversation like this. But I'd love to know like kind of a couple episodes that were staples for you. And
Yeah.
I know that we can see that like on a data end of things. We can see what people, so we don't even really have to ask people. We can see which ones they loved based on the shares and the
Right.
listens and whatever. But for us personally, regardless of what the numbers were on those episodes, what were some that, as you look back, like, I don't know, that really, really hit you?
Um, yeah. The one that I thought of was episode 14. We talked about reproductive health. And I
Oh, yeah.
remember we got to
Yeah.
do that one in the studio where you're at your
We were
house.
together. Yep.
And I remember before we recorded it, feeling nervous with you when we were in the kitchen, probably eating donuts or something, or some
Yeah.
baked good. And I
Yeah.
remember being like, I feel nervous about this one because it's such a controversial space to walk into. So
Yeah.
that one, an episode I really loved was episode 21, where we were over at my apartment and we talked about Love
Oh,
is
yeah.
Blind,
I love that.
and we
It was
talked
just fun.
about who would play you in a movie. And
That's lucky.
I have continued to carry a laughter in my head thinking of Jack Black playing you.
Me too. Season 2 guests. Let's just reach out to Jack Black. Throw all the marbles in one basket. You know what I mean? I'm in. I'm calling him.
I
Somebody get
recently
Jack Black
got
on the
called.
phone.
I recently got told that I look like Blake Shelton,
Oh God, I'm so dead.
so we could have Jack Black and Blake Shelton play us in a movie. So,
Yeah.
anyways,
And Blakey did write God's Country. So he is a tried and true patriot, just like yourself. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. Oh, I'm
so what were
dead.
your favorite episodes, or hard ones, or why?
Yeah, I totally feel the same way about the reproductive health. And that one was really hard for me because I shared our story about Rory. And that's so emotional to talk about. It's so emotional to share and go to those places. And but I loved that episode. I remember when we ended it, and this happens a lot, especially when we're in person, where we end
Yeah,
it and we'll kind of look at each other and we just know like that was the Holy Spirit. Like that was
that
God.
was the
God
best. Yeah,
breathed in that the space for us to be able to sit here and have these conversations. But
yeah,
and I know we felt that after that. But I actually had like 2 or 3 people reach out to me after that and they said, hey, and actually 2 of them very specifically said to me, I am actually, I love the podcast. My friend recommended it to me. Like it was messages on Instagram that I had to accept. Like it was people that I didn't know. The one girl. And she said,
yeah.
my friend sent me the podcast and I'm actually not a Christian, but I listened to the episode and she said, and I was very moved with understanding listening to your story about Rory. And I was like, wow, like just that she said I never cared or even thought about my family that's like ultra conservative and like pro, like I hate to say this term, but pro life, because really it's not really what it is, but that's
Right,
how they feel about the issue, right? And she said, and I've never been able to understand by any frame of the mind their perspective at all. Like I have never been able to get it. And when you shared that story, it just took me to a place for a second that had me of a place of understanding of where maybe their stories could be coming from, just like my own story of abortion myself. Like, you know what I mean? And I just thought that was really cool because there's not often times where on this podcast, I feel like you're getting one side and that's intentional. This is the community we're creating. But I
mm-hmm.
love when that one side can get perspective or have hope or openness or, I don't know. I just love when we can become better people of understanding, whether we disagree or not, with people in our lives. So I just thought that was kind of cool. Um,
I agree.
but I also, you know, I really loved the our Pride episode, which was episode 5, I think.
Oh, me too. Episode 6.
Was it?
Yeah,
No, it was 5.
fight me at 6.
Wait, I'm on the Instagram and we said it was.
Well, that's because
Well,
our social media person is wild.
I could have been wrong, but it says wait, episode 5. You guys have to let us know. I don't know.
Okay, everyone check Chelsea and
oh my God. Then all of our posts are wrong? No, we'll figure it out.
We
Anyway,
sure will.
I'm so dead. But that was it was my it was a really hard episode, and I remember
Yeah.
being it was 5. Thank you.
Okay.
Everybody, everybody right here, okay? Okay, sorry. We had to settle that now. Cuz we would forget, and then, who knew what the truth was. So anyway,
Oh,
but
it was 5.
uh, where's my
Oh
rainbow
no.
flag for the gay agenda? Anyways, but the thing about that episode that really got me is I remember I literally did not know even the day before if I was really gonna, because no matter what, we were doing a Pride episode. We were
Right.
doing a Pride episode to talk about our allyship and our affirming theology and yada yada yada, whether I was ever going to come out or not. And that was just kind
Right.
of like a piece if I was ready and if it felt right that I was going to share that. And I think for me, like, it was so hard and I was like so scared. And I just will never forget what it felt like to let go of like the last possible part of me that was hidden.
Yeah.
Because I think when you're in ministry, you just really learn to hide parts of you. And we had already said a curse word on the show. We'd already shared like why we left on the show. We were already openly affirming and like loving of the LGBTQ community on the show. So it was kind of like by episode 5, we had already done all the things that I was afraid of. Like we had already been honest and open about those things. That was kind of the last part of me that was hiding. And I was just really afraid to uncover that. And so that was probably my favorite just for that purpose alone. But
Yeah. Yeah, I love that episode. I loved sitting with you as somebody that like I've seen you wrestle with.
yeah,
Like who do you share that with and why and when? So to
definitely.
like sit there and kind of not and know that you were going to touch on it, but not know how you were going to touch on
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and
Cause
then just
it
be
wasn't ever
along for the ride.
anything.
I
Yeah. There
got
was nothing ahead of time for you to
I
know.
get to watch you and see you like be vulnerable about this thing that's been so deeply personal to you,
Yeah.
and so it's cool to see that bravery and in the way that you inspire me with your bravery as you go down some really hard conversations and roads in life, like uh
Well, and it's funny that you say that because that was one of my favorite episodes. And I touched on the conversation about reproductive rights that was your favorite just because of that message I got. But,
yeah,
on the same track of bravery, I told you before this episode, even we started recording, that one of my favorite episodes we ever recorded was the episode about family, which I think was 17.
yep,
I don't even know if I want you to correct me or not because it seems like you're not going to know, but you obviously
it
have no
was
clue.
17. Actually it was 17.3, so
I'm so done. That
I
sounds it.
but it is interesting because I agree that family episode, although very hard and continues to be very hard, I think it's these episodes where we were vulnerable
Yeah.
that has set a tone for how we want to be in the podcast,
Yeah.
and it's the ones that matter the most. So I think a lot
Yeah.
of the times we get criticized, well, maybe it's just inner critic too, is like when you share some of this stuff, and like it's hard to be personal to, I mean, we know there's people listening, we get a lot of responses, but when it's just you and I recording in these like little studios, it's
Yep.
like we were being personal to the wall, and
Definitely.
and
Yeah.
nobody in the room to like
Yep.
to actually speak to. So we're so thankful for those of you that listen, that respond to us, because it's these episodes where Chelsea shares about their experience with Rory, Chelsea coming out, me sharing how my family hasn't gone with me. Like those are the stories that like I got messages too.
Yeah.
Episode
Yeah.
17, I got tons of messages from people
Yep.
saying they're sorry for our experience, at me and my siblings, um but also so thankful that we opened ourselves up, because so and so felt the same way, and this person went through it too with the difference of a situation, and that's
Yeah.
what makes it so important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that 100%. And I think the family episode was so it was such a hard tension for me because I have been so angry at the way that Brandon's family has treated him and Jackie. Absolutely, I will include Jackie because you guys are a unit.
Right.
So that treatment of people that I am so close to, same with Shelby and same with Cody, the pain of that for me has been so hard because of like my love for you guys, but it was not my place to ever speak on it or ever pressure you to speak on it. So
Yeah.
it was really hard as we were building up 17 episodes. That turmoil in Brandon's family was happening that
Right.
entire time. And so we would get on the podcast and we'd record episodes, and almost every time in the back of my mind there was something we would talk about where I would wish so badly that we could open up that pain for people to know that they're not alone and know what you
Yeah.
were going through and know what you were carrying. But I couldn't. And so when you said to me, I think I'm kind of ready to, I was like, oh, I'm so thankful
Right.
because you deserve for people to know what you're carrying. And our audience, like, I know that they carry it with you, that you're not alone, you know? So it was just such a blessing when those moments and heartbreaking at the same time when
Right.
that got to happen.
Yeah. And you never did. You never pushed. Like, um, you're not you're not pushy. Like I think I a really something that like we're not really gonna get into big, but like I'm really protective of you because so many people are critical of you without actually knowing you, and I think
Because I'm a terrible person.
I think what's wild is you just aren't pushy for like when early on I remember you being like a nutritionalist, like is that the
Yeah.
right word? And I just remember being like, my diet has been so odd, and you have never been like, you never really push. You expressed your concern, but you never were like, Brandon, like order from Herbalife, get
Right.
all the things you need from me. Like you were
Yeah.
never sales like that.
Yeah.
You've encouraged me to go to the gym, even, but you've never pushed me. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, when it comes to talking about some of the hardest things for me to talk about, because it's deeply personal, I love these people. Um, and you've never been like, Brandon, it's time. Talk
Yeah.
about them. Like, you know, it's never been
Well,
like
and
that.
I think the one of the biggest reasons that's so awkward for me to admit, because it's almost embarrassing, is like because I genuinely loved your family.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to push because I sent your mom a Christmas card every year.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't want to push because I was on FaceTime with your sister at 11 o'clock at night when we talked about our upbringings and our families and our funny stories. So I think as much as that's embarrassing to admit because they couldn't give a shit about me and they have really probably hated me for a long time, I have loved them since the jump because of you and because
Yeah.
of our relationship with all of yours, with your whole family, you
Yeah.
know? So I think like that's another reason. Like, would I have been pushy if I didn't know them? Maybe. But knowing and like loving and praying for something to happen and something to break
Yeah.
through and for us to be more so talking about a redemption in a family rather than brokenness. And like for my prayer of that and like hope for
Right.
that was what constantly put me in this teetering of like, okay, we'll just wait. We'll just wait. We'll just wait, you know? So it's like, it wasn't just like being a good person. It was really just like praying that like something would, you know, finally come to
I
head and
agree.
conversation happen.
Yeah. So wild. Shelby and I recently talked about that time that you and Tyler were in Flint for some reason, and Shelby was telling me the other day the first time she met you, and
Oh
she
my God, I don't
was in a
remember.
relationship she didn't like,
I
but
probably hated them then, I'm sure.
probably, but she met you at Applebee's and she met you and Tyler. You guys were in Flint for whatever reason, and you met up with me, my dad, and Lisa and Shelby. Also came.
Yeah.
Shelby popped by Applebee's because it was like we were all
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
and so
I
she
remember
got to
that.
meet you. She got to like see you meeting my dad, like because I
Yeah.
think that was your first time meeting my dad, and
Yeah.
um, we were reflecting on this because in all of this hard stuff with my family,
Yeah.
and realize in being like dumbfounded of why so much can be projected to you.
Mm.
Where like we just really wish that somebody that was here, like my dad, that really loved you and Tyler and Rory, really, and this is, we just really wish you guys had the advocate that you guys should in my dad still being here.
I
I
wish
mean,
all the
we
time.
wish we had him as an advocate just
Anyway,
today, period. But like, but yeah.
I'll never forget the first time that I was called pure evil by connections from a church, from a Nazarene church. Like the first time. Obviously since we've had but like the first time that happened, that message was sent and that I read it and like I'll pray for you. And I remember like because your dad knew those people. And I remember just being like, I just wish so bad that he was here. And I had wished that, for a million other reasons. But the biggest thing was like, but I also am so thankful because like nobody can ever take that from me. Like
Hmm.
nobody can take like the relationship and the love that I
Nope.
had with and for your dad. Like nobody can take that. Like and nobody can take those years that I got to have with your dad that other people didn't get to have,
Yep.
that I got to be involved in his story and a part of his life, that like, oh my God, like what a privilege and a treasure. And
Yeah.
nobody, no matter how much you hate me or want to talk shit about me, nobody can take that from me. And it's just such a blessing now, not
Yeah.
knowing how short that time was going to be. It's such a blessing now.
Yeah. We, Shelby and I reflected on that dad showed up for Rory's dedication in the church.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Dad and Lisa came down there when Shelby and I couldn't. Like
Yep.
Shelby and I couldn't, and Dad still like was
Yep.
like, "Oh, I know what I'm gonna do Sunday." Yeah, you know what I mean. Like, and
Yep.
and what I want you to hear me say too is, so many people got to be got to be saying their intentions and their promises to my dad when he was dying,
Yeah.
and um, and you are one of few that has held to your word, and I just think like I
I can't handle it. Because I
I just
remember
think,
that phone call and it was about, and you know what he said to me?
I don't
And I
know,
don't
but that's all you and him. Like,
I don't
what
know
do you
if you
say?
were in the room, but he said to me, and, and I don't know how, I don't know at what stage of Brandon's dad's life he found out I was married. I don't know. But he said to me, in the beginning of your friendship with Brandon,
Oh my
I
gosh, this is
remember
so
just
funny.
just praying and praying that you would end up with my son. And he said, and then he laughed and you couldn't understand him very well. It was really in the
Yeah,
last stages of his life. And he said, but I realized my prayers were answered, that you are with my son. Not the way I thought, but he
yeah, yeah,
said,
yeah.
genuinely though. And so I want to make sure you take care of him and you stay with my son, kind of thing. And but it was so funny just laughing with him and of course I was like sobbing but listening to him tell that story and I was like, oh God. But it was just so funny and just he was
Yeah.
just such an amazing guy. But
The every young adult knows what it's like to where you introduce one person to your parents and they're crossing their fingers. It's like romantic or something
but my
like.
family was the same way because then what was it? Not that long into it that
No.
Tyler and I separated. And then I was single, and me and Brandon were still best friends. That had never changed. But then my family kind of jumped.
Oh my gosh.
So it was awesome. So our families just went through this, and obviously now we're like we're like brother and sister to our families too, like to my family especially. So my mom's
Yeah.
just like, are Brandon and Jackie, and my grandma, even before my grandma died, loved Jackie, and
Oh my
was so
gosh.
excited about Brandon meeting this girl. It was so funny. So just love these places. So episodes like that, the family episode, were so
Yeah.
instrumental in some of my favorite moments of the podcast because of our relationships with our families and our
Yeah.
relationship together. But
So letting things go,
yeah.
we did, you said like we wouldn't cut an episode that we have, but we did record 2 episodes that have never been out.
I would love to watch that first one again.
Oh God, it'd be such pain, I think, but I'd
But
watch it.
I don't remember why I don't remember what it was, but I just remember watching it back and feeling like that's not us. Like I don't remember what it was that I was like, we have to cut that. But I remember saying like, no way, we can't put that out. And I don't remember why, but I just remember feeling like that's not what I want people to know us as. Like that's not it. That's not who we are.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was either.
Gosh, it was just
But it's like one of those things that you just press when you just press record and jump into it. Like
because you have to. You have to. There's no other
it,
way.
it's a dress rehearsal, and those were cut. So someday maybe they'll be released or something, but I don't
Got
know.
like a stitch of us enjoying it while we're sharing it with you guys. Oh my god.
Yeah,
Well, and when we were sitting around, I remember back to when we wanted to create this podcast, you guys, my favorite thing about where we are now is I will never forget, a year and a half ago, or whatever this was, because it was a while ago. Brandon and I, we got brunch. We went to First Watch, and we were sitting in a booth, and we had our laptops, and we were kind of and we were going through a lot of crap that was going on, like within the Nazarene Church at the time. There was so much turmoil that was happening while we were trying to dream this vision, and we were
yeah,
trying to be really intentional about the podcast because we were afraid, like, what is it going to get messy, or is it going to get muddy launching this podcast? And there's all this shit going on, leaving the church, leaving the denomination, all this stuff. So we set aside this time to get really intentional and really plan like what we wanted for the podcast, and to not let our personal like struggles and some things that were going on get in the middle of this dream. And so we sat together, and it was just so funny because I remember us saying things like, okay, well, who do we want to be the people that are listening or whatever? And we'd be like, okay, like my mom, my friend that's an atheist, my dad, like, it was just so cool to dream together of what we wanted this to be. And it literally is
yeah,
everything and more that we said around that table that first time.
yeah. I just got up our Trello, and
Oh my gosh.
we have like a why are we doing this little note, and
Oh God.
some of these are just kind of cool to see now what we have, and I think even in the future to know what we have.
Yeah.
But we wanted to see people find community in places they didn't expect, especially if they're in dark or lonely seasons. You said you wanted to provide a safe place for LGBTQ plus friends and family. Eventually, you would love to share your own identity on this space as a part of my testimony.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yep. We
Wow, and
wanted to
5
give.
episodes in, huh? You think that was
I know 5 episodes in Chelsea. That was 20 episodes ago. Like
right.
it's
Been
kind of
in.
wild. I wanted to use my voice in a public way to ally for LGBTQ plus persons of color, women, and other marginalized communities.
And have you ever? Yeah. Wow.
And that's what I want.
Wow.
I want every second on this podcast to be a reflection of the pastors that we were in the small, holy, and best moments of our ministry. Wow, that got me.
That gets me too. I'm crying. Well, because even just hearing you say that, it's like I don't know how to explain how much I miss ministry.
Yeah.
In the good parts of who I was when I was whole in ministry.
Yeah.
And I wasn't. That's why I left. But there were pockets, like that exact quote you just said, the good. And like we just talked about at the conference when the speaker said, there's some part of me I want back. And I feel that about I loved being a pastor. Like I loved being a pastor so big. And it's hard to hear that.
Do you know those TikToks that are, or those memes that are like the look you give your best friend when there's something or when something happens in the room and like you look at your best friend and you're like,
Yeah.
like
Yes.
that used to be you and me in the back of like these chapels, and a student would go to the altar and you'd look at me and I look at you and you're like, it's you. Like,
Always. Yep. Yep.
and not in a passing the buck, like who's gonna take it. It was like a, oh my gosh, that's a moment that I know you wanted with that student. Like, and there
Yep.
they are. Like,
Yep.
when I just read small holy and good moments of our past ministry, Chels, like I literally thought about that time we sat up against the wall in the Gibson Center, uh, playing with like blocks or something with a student that
Oh my God, I know exactly what you're
uh,
talking
with a trans student, and I can't remember their name.
about. I can picture him right now. I know exactly what you're
Yeah,
talking
and
about.
I
His
can
name
picture
started
them
with a
too.
C, but I won't tell you.
Yeah,
On the
yeah. And I just remember like not really having the bravery that you did, but willingness to sit along the side with you of the wall with you and like and share some of your bravery and like and really get to know this person. Do you know what I mean? Like, so.
I remember coming out to that student. I remember telling that
Mm,
student the day before we were at the waterfront, and I said to him, and I think that his pronouns ended up. He said he really thought he was more of they them, but that he wasn't sure yet.
yeah,
He was figuring it out, but that he was not straight. He knew he was not straight, but he didn't know if
yeah,
that would affect his pronouns or not. And so he just wasn't sure. So he's like, I don't mind at all. Like I don't, And I said, well, I am a part of the queer community. I'm bisexual. And he said, oh my God, that's awesome. And we talked about some things and whatever. But I remember just feeling like I wish that I could say that to 1,000 more students. But
yeah,
I knew I was safe telling it to him because it, of who he was and his experience. But I remember that was such a transforming moment for me too. As much as you remember that, I remember those moments too, because I remember thinking it was why I had to get out. I'm like, I can't, because
yeah,
theology, the articles of faith of the Nazarene Church would tell him them, if that's where his pronouns, if that's where he ended up landing,
right,
they would tell them that they were not loved and accepted as they were in this denomination. They would have to change to stay. And I just remember thinking he's so perfect as he is,
hmm,
but I'm gonna have to tell him something different because that's what my license says. And
right,
I remember realizing in that moment that I had to go, and it was so heartbreaking. And then of course there were other things along the journey, but that was like it was the faces and names of students that I knew
hmm,
never needed to change, but were stuck in a denomination that would tell them they did.
yeah,
And it was horribly heartbreaking.
yeah. It's kind of been a cool theme to talk about. Is like, what are we letting some things go?
Yeah.
Um, I honestly feel like I'm in the middle of like one of my favorite episodes, to be real.
I love it too. I love it too.
What are some things with this podcast season one that you feel like uh that you're good with letting go, or like you're like ready to see happen in season two? Just
Well,
reflection, projection. What? How are you feeling?
no, for sure. Well, we talked about on the last episode when we kind of talked about season 1, we did talk about um how we were letting go of some of the hurt and the pain uh and that came out as anger. Like that was my biggest thing. Was like
Uh
I want
huh.
to, and I think I hear that in a lot of, as I listen back on season 1, I can hear a lot of anger in my voice,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm 100% okay with that. Wouldn't take any of it back.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I want to move on. So like when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to projection, it's like I'm really excited to give our space to other people in a sense. Like I'm really excited to hear other stories and other testimonies. Some of the guests that we've talked to,
Yeah.
some of the interviews we've set up. I'm so excited that I can get away from some of that anger and enter into a space of like newness
Yeah.
and sharing the platform. And I'm just really excited about that. I think we're ready for that.
I really have a sense of wonder with like
Yeah,
what
100%.
season 2 will be like. Um, because I feel that anger in some of our like postures towards some things.
Mhm.
Um, and again, like you said, that anger is a like that is okay to feel. Like we feel it. So like, of course, it's going to come out in different ways. But even even like laughing through some of the pain, which we will still do,
Yeah, oh yeah.
but that may I feel like sorry. I feel sorry for like the things that have led me to where I have to laugh to get
Mhm.
through some of these things.
Yeah.
And not everyone understands that. Sometimes when you laugh at pain, people don't see it as like a strength, but like
Yeah.
they see it as like making a mockery of or something like that. But
But that's not the reality for us for sure.
no, 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 no. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I do wanna kind of close out today with some recommendations, and then I really
Yep.
wanted to read a little something that I put aside for this episode as we end season one. But I wanted to start with just a couple book recommendations, and then Brandon, I know you have one or two podcast recommendations.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to say that our podcast is not super educational. I don't say that to be like funny or like whatever. But the reality is, like Brandon and I were afraid when we started this. We kind of thought like, do we want this to be like the Bible for normal people? Like if you guys have heard some of the languaging around like some of the podcasts and different books and things that take scripture and then they teach it to you in a way that like you understand, like, well, why are Brandon and I affirming? Let's break that down theologically. And I
Right.
think right from the get, Brandon and I knew that wasn't who we wanted to be. Um and so but there are books that have helped me a lot in navigating those things. And so one of those books that I have recommended a lot on this podcast, but I just want to bring it up again because I just recommended it to another listener the other day. um, and it is called Accidental Saints by Nadia Bolz-Weber. And so I really still want to recommend that. And then there are two LGBTQ books I want to recommend to you. And one explain theology and consensual sex between two loving and committed people not being sinful. And they really get into that very deeply. And that is Jesus, the Bible, and homosexuality. And that's by Reverend Dr. Jack Rogers. And that is probably my number one. But then there's another very mild version of that book almost that's way more basic and way more simple, I would say, not to be off-putting, but it's just different. And that is called God and the Gay Christian. And I just those are three reads that I would say if you have time, pick them up and comb through those. So
Two podcasts that I think would be cool, and some of these are like, we love you. If you want more content, look at these people's content while we're gone for like a month and a half.
yeah,
Um, we'll still be active on the Instagram though, so you can catch us
for
there.
sure. For sure.
But New Evangelicals podcast.
Love that one.
So that podcast, but also their Instagram, which is kind of like what captivates me, is
Absolutely.
Tim Whitaker's. Uh, he's when he does like current event stuff and kind of breaks some things down or calls some things out. That stuff is so consumable for me that I love it.
Yeah.
Um, and then the Bible for Normal People does have a side series that's called Faith for Normal People.
That's their little picture. If you're looking for their Instagram,
That's right.
kind of
A
wanted to
little
show you guys
picture.
that. Love them so much.
Faith for Normal People is where the normal hosts of Bible for Normal People interview guests that have like had like a deconstruction or like a reconstruction of their faith. And the first one kicks off with Rhett Link,
Mhm.
or no, with Rhett McLaughlin and his wife. And that is amazing. You guys will know Rhett and Link from their like seriously popular YouTubers. But honestly, an episode that I really liked of that was Rainn Wilson was a guest from Dwight from The Office,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Rainn Wilson talked spirituality, and it was amazing. So, um, that's my podcast recommendation.
I love that. And I second those recommendations too. 100% love those. Love those podcasts. So I wanted to close. If you have not read this book, it's called Untamed, by Glennon Doyle. And, you know, Brandon's heard about Untamed forever because it is, like probably the book paired with Accidental Saints that changed my whole life. And really, Accidental Saints I read right before this book, and then this was the next book after that. And for me, both of those books gave me permission to be okay
Mm-hmm.
with who I was. And really, after I read Untamed, it was almost where I started to get out of a place where I thought I really need to take my life, because I would rather die how people see me than to ever be open and honest about who I really am in my sexual identity, and in all these other ways, like as we've explored in 25 episodes. um like I would rather take my own life than be open and to people's criticisms and hate about who I really am. And then I read Accidental Saints, and then I read Untamed. And so when I talk about these books, I don't talk about them lightly. Like they literally were part of what saved my life.
Yeah.
um so I really thought that, to end this episode, that we would like to just pray with you in closing this chapter and closing season 1. But I wanted to read this first before I kind of pass the prayer to Brandon. I wanted to really open it with this thought. If you don't know Glennon Doyle's story, she was married to a man for several years who had countless affairs on her. She was a Christian author and speaker, um, and she ended up leaving everything behind and ended up marrying Abby Wambach, coming out as a lesbian, and really breaking out of her faith and coming into something new in her relationship with God. So that's like her very brief rundown of her story, so you have context to this reading. But this is page 100 of Untamed, and it says, um, being bad had almost killed me, but so had being good. I was talking to a dear friend around that time, and she's talking about around the time where she was leaving her husband. She said, "Gee, remember that amazing Steinbeck quote? And now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good." I've kept it on my desk for years. I looked at it last night and I thought, I'm tired of being good. I'm so tired. Let's change it to, and now that we don't have to be good, we can be free. And before we pray, I want to just share my heart with you that when I became a religious dropout, when I left my life behind, the beauty in the people and the life that I have gotten to live in being free, I want to give that same permission to you. You don't have to be good anymore. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
be free in all that you are and all the pieces that
Mm-hmm.
you are. And I just want you to feel that so big and so true when you open this podcast, when you listen to this podcast, and when you listen to Brandon and I share our hearts with you. We don't have to be good. We can be free.
Dear Jesus, I thank you for the way that you go with us and the way that you've been with us in um, this insane season 1 of this podcast. And it's been wild the way that you've used Chelsea and I, but the way that you brought us all together as a community. And I just want to thank you for the way that you can relieve pressure on us, to where we feel loosened by the need to be good, and empowered by your freedom, Lord. And I just think, um, as we go into these holiday seasons where a lot of us might not meet with family the same way that we used to. We might be meeting with our chosen family this Christmas and Thanksgiving, because our family won't see us. Um, we might be still closeted to who we are, and God, I just ask that you help us to embrace freedom and embrace the beautiful creatures that you've made us to be. And I hope that we don't feel lonely, like we did when we were with people. The loneliness of being surrounded by people, but not being true to who you are. So we thank you, God, for awakening us to who we are, and we pray that you go with us this holiday season, and as we begin walking into what season 2 looks like. We love you, God, and God loves all of you listening to us. Amen.
Amen. Dropouts fall. This is a wrap. Season 1. We love you.
Love you.